Welcome to the Lone Zebra podcast, where I share my nitty-gritty health story and what I learned from the School of Hard Knocks. Things that doctors will never tell you. Hi, I'm your host, Diane Lalomia, and I'm glad you're here. We zebras need to stick together. Today on episode 018 of The Lone Zebra, Lies versus Truths, I'm going to be talking about perspective, forgiveness, and vitamin B6, and how that helped me put all those other things in the past and helped me pave a way to my future, to healing from chronic disease. I invite you to stay tuned and find out for yourself. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about perception because it relates to how I found out with vitamin deficiencies I was able to change my stinking thinking. That's what I called it. Yes, I would get into a ruminating thought pattern where I would play over and over something that had happened previously. It always put me in a perception of being a victim. How could they do that to me? How could they say that? How did this happen? Over and over, I would replay the scenes, and I would constantly bring up the emotion that went with that particular situation where I felt either misunderstood or mistreated, or somehow felt that I was being victimized. This didn't help at all with helping me heal, because each time I replayed that tape in my head, I had the same emotions, which translated into the same biochemistry in my body, which set me up for disease and not for healing. So, once I got to taking vitamin B6, it helped me a lot with those ruminating thoughts. And I no longer find myself replaying old scenes in my head. I no longer feel as though I'm the victim. That has changed tremendously with helping me heal. But I do want to say one caveat is that some people experience toxicity with B6. And there are several different reasons why this may happen. But what I understand is that people that are deficient in B2 are going to have problems assimilating B6. And it will become toxic in the body. So before you do B6, start with B2. And I recommend, after doing B2, getting replete in B1 or thiamine before proceeding to start trying to take B6. This should help a lot of toxicity issues for people. And the other issue is, instead of the typical B6, which is pyridoxine HCl, try the more available form that's ready to assimilate in the body, which is known as PLP, or I take one that is labeled P5P for the pentose or fifth-sided biochemical structure known as P5P. This may help a lot of people, and I hope it does, because most everyone is deficient in B6. because processed foods have denatured any kind of vitamin content, especially B6. Our society is very, very deficient in many vitamins and minerals. And I always tell everyone to test, don't guess. There are ways to test the vitamin B6 levels in your blood. But one way that I am familiar with is that you, as the patient, can realize when you have dream recall, and if you have none, you are deficient in B6. When you remember your dreams, you have enough B6. That's one easy way to tell if you need B6 or not. So that's my take on perception. Understand that vitamins can help with mental adjustments, make your thinking no longer stinking thinking. Instead, think of gratitude, things that make you happy, that fulfill you. That's the key. Reading from the book Women of Purpose, a daily devotional for discovering a meaningful life in Christ by Sarah Daigle. Day 39. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, New King James Version. Refusing to receive words from the enemy is part of becoming a woman of truth. People speak, the devil speaks, and God speaks. Who will you choose to listen to? There will always be voices to discourage you from becoming all God means for you to be. Words that make you feel insecure, inadequate, crushed, defeated, or condemned are not coming from God. Listen only to words from the Lord and refuse to take wrong words in, including the ones in your own mind, which can be some of the worst. It's so easy to believe that we will never be who we are meant to be, that we will never be good enough. We listen to those doubts until we are dragged into the dirt and can barely lift our heads. Jesus lifts our heads when before we buried our faces. Christ clears our countenance when before nothing was clear. When we finally learn to say no to all lies, we find clouds clearing above our heads. The lie enters our mind, and just as quickly it leaves, because we counter it with truth. Say in your heart or out loud, I refuse to receive this. Go ahead. Say it. I refuse to receive this. For those in the habit of receiving lies, it may take many, many times of refusal before you're in the habit of receiving truth alone. Negative habits develop slowly, but you can put them away surely. You may be saying, but what if I feel is true? I'm a failure, or I have the right to be hurt. We truly have failed, and we do have valid reasons for pain. But didn't Jesus have something better in mind than for us to be destroyed by our own failure or someone else's sin? He loves us far too much for that. Is that not why Jesus came to redeem failure and make it new? To cleanse the worst sin and give life? We honor him when we receive his gift and quit giving the devil opportunity to win. Counter your own lies with God's truth. God never condemns, he delivers. God never puts you down, he lifts you up. God never holds a grudge after you've repented. He removes the transgression as far as the east is from the west. washes you in his blood, and clothes you in white garments. God never says you're not good enough. He says his grace is perfected in your weakness. In other words, your weakness is actually an asset to him because it causes his grace to shine brighter. God never demands that you perform better. He gives his love so overwhelmingly that it causes you to reflect it from the inside out. God never judges you from the outside. He sees your heart and whether or not it is pure. God never gives you more than you can bear. In fact, his yoke is easy and his burden is light. God doesn't judge your worth by the number of friends you have. Jesus chose to hang out with those who were rejected by society. God never thinks more highly of you when you have wealth. Jesus had nowhere to lay his head and did not seek material gain or repute. God never compares you with others. He tells you that you are fearfully and wonderfully made by him for his pleasure. God never wakes you up with thoughts of dread for the day. He says his mercies are new each morning. Each day with him, no matter how difficult, holds the promise of love, purpose, and meaning. God never, ever makes you feel defeated. He reaches out his hand and lifts you up. Then he turns your sin or mess up around to create something beautiful. God never tells you your life is for nothing, even if all you see is ashes. He says he will make beauty out of ashes. God never makes you feel alone. He says he will never leave you or forsake you. God never makes you feel purposeless. He says his plans have been there for you from the foundation of the world. God never turns away. He tries to tell you how much he sees and cares for you by letting you know. He sees a sparrow when it falls. Most people are not that fond of sparrows, which is probably why this bird is used for his example. If God sees a sparrow and cares for it, how much more does he care for you? God never makes us feel overwhelmed. He promises strength for anything that lies ahead. God never bogs us down with our past. He puts it behind and asks us to reach forward. God never measures our worth with our bodily perfection. He doesn't see as people see, and he looks for the heart. God never measures us by our popularity or lack thereof. He often seeks out the lowly to perform his greatest tasks. He can only bless the humble and those who will give him all credit. Popularity has a way of inflating the human mind with its own worth. Is this why Jesus chose many fishermen, shepherds, and lowly tribesmen with whom to spend his time on earth? God never depresses us. Rather, the gift of his Spirit is joy. Does anyone feel a cloud lifted already? The power of truth is so incredibly life-changing, which is why our enemy works overtime to get us to listen to the counter. Pursue truth. Refuse lies, delivered by your own mind or other people, and you will find one burden after another lifted from your shoulders. But he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." When you tune into truth, you will begin to wonder where you've been. You will see that you've been so used to listening to false that you had no idea how wonderful it is to live in truth. The most wonderful thing is, truth is not contingent on what someone else thinks of you. Truth is always truth. When God speaks, you cannot argue. And when you finally refuse to argue, you will hear his song more than the devil's lies. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John chapter 8, verse 32, New King James Version. Father, help us to tune into your song for our lives. Amen. Vitamin B6, also known as pyridoxine. Deficiency of pyridoxine or vitamin B6 is most common in those of us who eat diets centered around junk or convenience foods. Foods processing destroys up to 90% of vitamin B6 content of any food, which means that whole, fresh foods are the key natural source. Many menstrual problems, including PMS, are also linked to small deficiencies of this vitamin. Take the vitamin B6 as part of a good B complex supplement with equal amounts of vitamin B1 and B2. It goes on to say that arthritis sufferers taking penicillamine will require B6 supplements. Canning, roasting, heat processing, water, alcohol, and estrogen all destroy vitamin B6. B6 should not be taken by anyone undergoing levodopa treatment for Parkinson's disease. Taking doses of over 2 to 10 grams can cause neurological disorders. Vitamin B6 is another of the water-soluble vitamins, and any excess is normally excreted from the body about 8 hours after ingestion. And because up to 90% of the vitamin is destroyed through food processing, deficiency is quite common. B6 is also known as pyridoxine, pyridoxinol, and pyridoxamine, all of which are related substances. Pyridoxine is the most commonly used form of vitamin B6. However, there is a more active, ready-to-assimilate form that's known as P5P, which I take in addition to the regular B6 pyridoxine HCl. Pyridoxine is the most commonly used form of vitamin B6. Women taking hormone replacement therapy, HRT, or the contraceptive pill will have increased requirements. So too will people with diets high in protein or with an excessive alcohol consumption. Necessary for the production of hydrochloric acid and magnesium. Necessary for absorption of vitamin B12. Necessary for the production of antibodies and red blood cells. It metabolizes protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Helps metabolize and transport selenium. B6 is a natural diuretic. It helps the body to absorb zinc and alleviates nausea. Promotes synthesis of nucleic acid. Deficiency symptoms of B6 are anemia, insomnia, kidney stones, morning sickness, premenstrual syndrome or PMS, skin rashes and dry skin, nervousness, and infant convulsions. Good sources of B6 are found in avocados, bananas, fish, wheat bran, liver, cantaloupe, cabbage, milk, eggs, and seeds. Therapeutic uses for B6 are night muscle spasms, leg cramps, hand numbness, morning sickness, skin and nervous disorders, insulin resistance, PMS, carpal tunnel syndrome, asthma, kidney stones, anemia, fluid retention, childhood autism, and heart disease. Now today I am introducing a new book called Nourishing Traditions, and it has some information about B6 in the book. And it says pyridoxine or B6 deficiencies are widespread in America, partly because our traditional source of this heat-sensitive vitamin, raw milk, is no longer sold commercially. It requires some courage to consume the best source of B6, which is raw liver. I don't think so. This leaves raw cheese, meat, and fish as the only sure sources of B6 available to most Americans. When B6 is lacking, the pathways for use of vitamins B1 and B2 may be less effective, leading to widespread symptoms of B vitamin deficiencies. Deficiencies of B6 have been linked with diabetes, heart disease, nervous disorders, carpal tunnel syndrome, PMS, morning sickness, toxemia of pregnancy, kidney failure, alcoholism, asthma, sickle cell anemia, and cancer. B6 supplements have been shown to be highly effective in preventing blindness in diabetics. Americans would be wise to include raw meat or fish on a frequent basis to avoid these debilitating conditions. That being said, I don't eat raw meat or fish. I'm not a sushi gal, so that's all there is to that. I won't go into any more. Some of you might like that, but I prefer to steer clear because of the experiences I've had with certain undercooked shellfish. I won't go down that road, but so there you go, women. Those of you who are taking the birth control pills or are on any kind of estrogen, whether it be hormone replacement therapy, I encourage women to have your levels tested. Test, don't guess. You know, one thing that really held me back for a long time was understanding how important forgiveness is in the healing process. You see, I had a lot of different things, different traumas throughout my childhood. We all have our ghost or whatever in the closet, the skeletons in the closet, things that continued to haunt us. I needed to let go. I needed to forgive. Yes, I blamed my mother for a lot of my troubles. I blamed my circumstances. I blamed doctors. I blamed almost anybody that I could because I was afraid to look inside myself and understand that the anger wasn't helping, that forgiveness was not only going to set me free, but it was going to be the first step in healing, to get rid of those skeletons in the closet and to be able to be free of all of those past thoughts that no longer served me. What was that going to mean for me in the future if I continued to carry this burden of hurt? It wouldn't. It was time to forgive. Time to realize that people have circumstances that they are thrown into. Maybe it was the best that they could do at that particular time. Maybe it was all that doctors knew at that time. Maybe, just maybe, they aren't the bad dudes or the bad guys. Maybe it's just one of those things that I've blown up into a monster, a skeleton in my closet. It's time to say goodbye. It's time to forgive. And instead of having that anger, find ways to find gratitude for what you have in your life now, what your future will look like. We see things a lot clearer in front of us than the little things in our rearview mirror. So look at the road ahead and focus on your future. Today's featured music is The Seeds We Sow by David Celeste. Enjoy! All information in this podcast or on the website, blog, or in newsletters is for educational purposes only and not intended to be construed as medical advice, diagnosis, or prescription. Please seek the help of a medical professional to get treatment for your particular condition. Thanks for listening to the Lone Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes at dianelalomia.substack.com. That's Diane, D-I-A-N-E, Lalomia, Lalomia.substack.com. Music on the podcast is provided by Epidemic Sound. See the show notes for featured music and artists. Don't forget to share this podcast with your family and friends, especially fellow zebras. And don't forget to rate The Lone Zebra on your favorite podcast app so others can find me. Until next time, blessings. Have a great day.